Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to learn the secrets of thriving to flourish abundantly in all areas of life. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur, real estate developer, coach, and mentor. He has bought, developed, and sold over $250 million in real estate, built and renovated hundreds of custom homes and commercial buildings, developed residential and mixed-use subdivisions, and started 12 different companies from the ground up. He currently mentors some of the top entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and real estate developers in the country, helping them grow and scale their business, raise more capital, and do bigger deals. His current clients have over $2 billion of deals in process. Welcome, Greg Dickerson.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so pleased to have you with me today, Greg, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you as the person behind a phenomenal success story. Greg, let's start with, let's step back to your childhood. And if you can bring to mind a time from your childhood that, as you look back on it, of course, at the time, you didn't realize it as a formative experience, but as you look back on your life, you consider it to be one of the formative times in your life. And your childhood can be anything from 1 to 50. But yeah, whatever. So
I'm military, so we moved around a lot. You know, as a kid, I was born in Virginia Beach. My dad was military. So we were moved to San Francisco, then San Diego. I did my preschool years there, and a lot of different experiences there that kind of shaped me. And that's where I started my entrepreneurial journey as a fourth grader, going around cutting grass for people. And then we moved to Pensacola, Florida. My dad was transferred there from 5th grade to 11th grade. And he started as an enlisted, went in the military enlisted as a bosun's mate, which is a grunt. Those are the guys chipping and painting on the boats. And he came out an officer. He was frocked as a warrant officer. So he rose to the ranks very quickly, very hard worker, very disciplined, and was turned into an officer and was the bosun of the ship, which is one of the most respected positions on the ship underneath the captain. So that's who I had as a dad. So when he was transferred to Pensacola, Florida, he was the brig officer. That was his first duty station. So that was a challenging time in terms of him bringing that kind of brig, which is prison, military prison. He was in charge of that, so like a prison warden. So bringing that home and those types of disciplinary things, into the home. And so I did 5th grade through 11th grade in Pensacola, Florida. And those were my real formative years where I grew up. And I am a natural born entrepreneur. So nobody in my family were entrepreneurs, none of them. But I was always very outgoing, very gregarious. My name is Greg. And my mom always said I had the gift of gab, which means I was either full of it or I like to talk to people. So I was the kid that would just knock on your door. Hey, Alan, my name's Greg. I live down the street. Now, this is a 5th grader. I live down the street. I need to make some money because I'm doing X, Y, or Z. Do you have anything you need done? I'll cut your grass. I'll rake your yard, whatever time of the year it was. We didn't have snow there for snow shoveling. We had huge pine trees. So I would carry my rake with me and I'd be right there, rake in hand. I'd have a tarp with me. And I'd be like, man, I'll rake your grass right now. Rake all these pine needles up for $20. I'll cut your grass for $20. I didn't care how big it was. It was just my price. So I was kind of wired that way. And my dad would charge me for using his equipment. So I would have to pay a percentage of whatever I made, and I would have to replace gas, oil, and all that for the lawnmower and clean it and all that. So the biggest things I was taught as a young individual was if you borrow something, you return it in better shape than you received it, and you never let anybody ask you for it back, whether that's equipment, whatever it is, vehicle. If I used his vehicle when I was young, I had to return it with a full tank of gas, regardless of where it was when I got it. So oddly enough, that thing always needed gas on a Friday afternoon after he'd used it all week to get back and forth to work. So I always had to replace the gas. So I was taught at a very young age the discipline and hard work ethic that, the military teaches you and ingrains in you. Back in the old school days of the military is very different than it is now. It was a much more stern, disciplined, iron fist kind of an environment. And that's how I was raised. you do what I say and you don't question. So that's what I heard, ours is to do or what was it? I can't remember the saying, something, ours is, to do or die or something. I can't remember the saying. I'll come back to it. But I was just taught these little sayings. Ours is not to question why, ours is but to do or die. So I grew up with those types of sayings, do what I say, not what I do, and, I'm the authority, so just do it. So we follow orders or people die. So that's how I was raised. So just that real stern discipline and work ethic and, following through, making sure a task is done. And then understanding as an entrepreneur the cost of, operating a business. So if I was going to use equipment to run a business, there was a cost associated with it. So, those were the types of things that were ingrained in me. And, I always had to earn an allowance. So my dad would never give me money. I had to do something for it. So I did all of the chores around the house, everything from chopping wood, cutting the grass, cleaning the vehicles, cleaning the garage, painting the house. It was a single story house, thank goodness. Whatever needed to be done, I did it, and at a very young age. So it was ingrained in me that if you wanted something, you needed to go out and create the money to get it. So that's how I'm wired. I know how to create money from nothing. I know how to start businesses from scratch. And I always knew that no matter what, I would be able to do that. So that was really cool. And that was, now back during those days, I thought it was punishment because, he'd get me up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning and I had to do all these chores before I could go do anything. So that was the other thing I was taught. Take care of business first, then go have your fun. So, as a kid, I always wanted to just go do something. No, before you get there, you got to knock this out, this out, and this out. So whether it needed being done or not, he always made sure there was something I had to do before I went out and had my recreation. So that's what I learned there was take care of business first, then enjoy yourself and the fruits of your rewards for your hard work. So really, really interesting.
Well, as I'm hearing that, I'm wondering, what about your childhood? If you could go back to your childhood, what would you change about your childhood? What would you change about your parenting?
So military, my dad was gone. So he just wasn't even around the first 16 years, or first 14 years. I'm sorry. So for the first 14 years, he was out to sea all the time. And that was back in the military when they did world tours. So he was gone one time for like 14 months. So I grew up in a very stressful, abusive environment. So my mom was left alone with myself and my sister, who was 2 years older. So, we got beat, or I did quite a bit. My mom would just be so stressed out. She would just freak out. If your room wasn't clean, she'd come in and tear it up and then beat the snot out of you. Whenever my dad was home, he's a very angry man. So both of their parents were alcoholics. So my dad, he never, I never knew my grandfather. His mom was an alcoholic. He had 3 or 4 dads. My mom's dad was an abusive alcoholic. So that's the environment they came from. And they were the first ones in their families to really rise out of that kind of stuff. And nobody in our family ever went to college. My dad, even still, is the only one. I didn't go to college. I went in the Navy right out of high school. But he's the only one that went to college, got his degree in our entire family so far. And, so what I remember about that was whenever he was home, he was very angry, very stressed. He rode a motorcycle, and this is in California in my early years before 5th grade. And I remember hearing the motorcycle come home and I would go hide because I knew he would be in a rage. He'd be mad. And he wasn't a drunk or anything. He was just a very angry guy. And, I don't know what he grew up with. I don't know what made him that way, but I know he had a very harsh environment growing up on the streets of Ocean View in Norfolk, Virginia. Very tough area at the time to grow up. So he grew up running the streets, fighting, working hard. I mean, he ran a paper route, made money. His mom would take the money and use it for alcohol and his sisters, and she was married 3 or 4 times. So just very difficult environment. Trailer park, he grew up in a trailer park. Not that that says anything about people that live in trailer parks, but the one he lived in was not a great one in that area. It was very difficult. So if I could change anything, it would be, that, so he was gone. I did not have a good influence in my life as parents. They were very poor influences. They had no faith. They had no direction. My mom was a basket case. She was just always stressed out all over the place. Then when he finally did get shore duty, his last 6 years when we moved to Pensacola, that was shore duty. He was just gone all the time. He didn't want to be with his kids. He was out with his buddies, riding his motorcycle, doing his own thing. He played tennis every night. So he never spent any time with me, or my sister. He was just gone doing his own thing. So he's very selfish, very self-centered, did not really want kids. He made us, we did all the chores. Again, it was good, but on the same token, we did everything. I mean, we had to cook, clean, do the dishes, the whole 9 yards. And he would tell us, we'd have to bring him his coffee, make his lunch, and all that stuff. And he would tell us, I had kids, to serve us. That's why we had kids, to serve us and do our chores. So we never had a good relationship, with any of my parents. I never had a really good, close relationship, still don't. My dad died at 72, brain cancer, very healthy a couple of years ago, took him out like 6 months. And, it just was never we just didn't have a close relationship. And, nor do I with my mom, but he was mean. He was mean, very abusive, beat the snot out of you, that kind of thing. And never wanted to spend any time teaching me anything, doing anything. So I was always out, learning from other people, learning from other circumstances and, those types of things. So, so that, that's what I would change. If anything, it'd be, to have somebody who, was obviously a better parent, better father, and spent a little bit more time with his kids,
Well, I'm really touched as you share that experience, and I'm amazed at how you as a man and as adult have come out of that and have changed that trajectory. I mean, also your parents changed the trajectory from which they were raised. Actually, from what you describe here, what we would actually define your parents are dry alcoholics. They have all the characteristics of an alcoholic, but they chose not to go down that alcoholic path like their parents had, which it still gave you a very rough background to grow up in, but at least were able to keep the alcohol out of the picture.
Yeah, it was very different. So in California, again, this was preschool, early elementary to 4th grade. My dad was gone. It was just my mom, and then she was trying to work, take care of us. So I was running the streets at a very, very early age, and I was a discipline problem in school. So, because of that environment, I had a lot of trouble. I had ADD, and all the things that kids have, that I just was not good in the school environment, but I was always in trouble, always getting in trouble in school, getting in fights, stuff like that. And then when I came home, if I ever had any issues, man, I would get the snot beat out of me when I got home for that. But I always stayed happy. I always had a smile. It's really interesting. I'm the kid that always had that big smile on my face. I could never stop grinning, never stop smiling. Even today, I just smile all the time. So I was always happy and always had fun. But, like I said, there was that environment going on. And I would just be out running the streets all day long. So I had some older friends in California that were not great influences. So, I mean, I saw my first Penthouse magazine, when I was in 2nd, 3rd grade. I had a neighbor who was a teenager that would steal them from his father. I drank my first beer at the same time, had my first cigarette. I mean, all those types of things that were going on running the streets in Southern California and San Diego with teenage influences while I'm here in the elementary school learning these things. So we were just kids running loose. So those are the things that we were learning and getting into. And, lots of trouble from that perspective. And, so it is interesting when you look back, how you can rise up out of an environment like that and not have any issues or any regrets. I don't hold anything. So when you ask me what would I change, it's not that I'm like, oh, I wish my life was different. It's all that. No, it would just be great to have had a father who was wise and who poured into his kids versus the other. That's all. Because I think that could have made even more of a difference, and would have helped me, even more earlier on, where I had to figure a lot of things out for myself and go at it the hard way, and had a lot of challenges that with the right guidance I could have overcome earlier, So that's all I'm saying there. They were the parents; they did the best they could. I don't know what made them their way exactly, other than the environments they came up in. My dad never really talked about it. Who knows? He could have been abused. You just never know. What could have happened. So anyway, to look at where I've come from somebody who grew up in that environment and had to learn it all the hard way, had to do it all the hard way. And if I wanted something, I had to go make it happen. I mean, I educated myself. I didn't go to college. I educated myself, and I learned personal, professional development, mindset, business, all of that stuff, by pouring into myself. I did have a couple of corporate jobs, and I learned a lot in the Navy. I did retail in the Navy, and there were a lot of lessons and things there. that poured into me. But my professional career from 1997 on as an entrepreneur, since I started in 1997, I started with nothing, from nothing, no money, no mentors, no help. I just said, man, I want to go do this. I've always wanted to do this. And I had a couple of businesses on the side before that, but I just dove in full time then. And it's been, it's been wide open ever since in terms of entrepreneurship. And, I've never looked back. But I had to do that myself. I had to make it happen. And, but for the grace of God, I should have been dead or in jail before I ever, entered my 20s.
For those just tuning in, my guest today is Greg Dickerson, a serial entrepreneur, a real estate developer, coach, and mentor with a phenomenal history. And we are just getting to know Greg here. Greg, you were talking about all of the negative influences that you grew up with. There had to be a turning point in your life. Can you pinpoint what that turning point was? You said that there were no mentors and so on and so forth when you were going into business. But what was it within you that said, I'm not going to have this kind of life. I'm going to have something different?
So that was just always. So I can remember as an early child growing up, again, I was always afraid of my dad, my parents, that environment. So even though they were negative influences, it didn't create that in me. My sister now, she struggles. She's got a lot of issues. But with me, it just didn't penetrate. It didn't sink in. I just was different, and again, I've got a strong faith in God, and I believe that's part of it. I mean, he's had his finger on me the whole time, but I pursued that, and I dug into that on my own, even as an early child. Always believed in God, believed in Jesus, knew that, read the Bible on my own, studied it, and didn't live the walk, as a mature Christian faith walk, didn't live it out my earlier years, and still struggle today, obviously, but it never affected me negatively, but it did put a sincere desire in me that I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be that kind of parent. I'm not going to be that way with kids and this and that and the other. So it really that's kind of how it always was. So I did what I did in spite of that upbringing. And I was always very aware, because I've got a temper, and I always had a hard time with that. That was what I learned. That was an influence that was hard to shake, was being, short tempered, not a lot of patience. That was my dad, right? He would blow up in a heartbeat. So I had to really fight against that because I want to get stuff done. I'm very, determined. I'm very dominant personality. When you look at the DISC profile, I'm high D, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a leader. Let's go. I'm a big picture, big vision. Nothing's going to stop me. If I've got a vision, I'm going, and we'll break down that wall and, hey, clean that mess up, so we can keep going. So I have to really taper that. And I had to really work on that in myself as a young leader. I had a lot of those, just do what I say, don't question me. I had a lot of that in me that I had to really work on. So I was very aware of what I did not want to be. Same thing with alcoholism. It's funny you mentioned my parents. I've never thought of that dry alcoholic thing. But because of my grandparents, when I was out partying as a teenager and doing all that, I was always very aware in the back of my head, I don't want to be an alcoholic. So I was always very careful, as a teenager and into my early 20s. I don't drink at all now and haven't for since 04. I don't think I I didn't really drink since 2004, just for health reasons, not because of, whatever. I just doesn't make me feel good, and I just didn't like it, and I didn't have time for it. So, but I did party with the best of them before that, and I was always very aware of that there's a lot of alcoholism in my family lineage. And actually, my mom's sister was a drug addict and died, from AIDS because she was an intravenous drug user. So that's in my family, that bad bloodline. And I'm just not going down that path, So that's kind of what drove me, was what not to be. So I guess in the best way, that was probably actually a good influence, in terms of what shaped me, in terms of what I didn't want to be.
That's interesting that, even as a very young child in elementary school, you had seen that there was a different road than what had been given you as examples by your parents. And you said that early on you had had decided that you were going to have a faith in God and that you were reading the Bible, studying the Bible, yet your parents had no faith at all.
Didn't go to church, nothing, yeah.
Yeah. Were you attending church as a child? Or?
I think my mom had taken us a little bit when we were younger, like Easter, Christmas, that kind of stuff. And we always had a Bible in the house, but she didn't practice. So she was either, Buddhist or, Christian Science or reincarnation. I mean, she was whatever over her lifetime years. And then they both came to faith later at the end of their lives because of me. When I moved to the Outer Banks, we got involved with the church and I began my faith walk and began to mature in my faith. And then that brought them back to faith, So they are, or my dad was, but my mom is now, very, very involved and takes it serious. But yeah, it just hooked me. I just knew. I always knew the truth. I always had a hunger for it. I could spot the charlatans. I knew the TV evangelism stuff was wrong. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida, very strong Southern Baptist, legalistic environment. So, I knew the truth. I knew about unity. I knew that denominations were not, that those things were divisive and not unifying. That type of stuff. So it's always been about the relationship and the walk, not the rules and not, the control and the, corporate structure of a faith.
Phenomenal story. Every entrepreneur, every successful person has had to come to terms with setbacks, and certainly you learned that really very early on in life in a number of different ways, and you've applied that really throughout your life. That fact that there's going to be setbacks, disappointments, and you developed very, very early on that to deal with those, it's my responsibility to actually find a way to overcome those setbacks and disabilities. So talk to us a little bit here about what you would consider to be your primary, I guess it would be your greatest achievement in life.
I don't think it's there yet, but so far, just my ability to be able to do what I've done from nothing, with nothing, by relying on faith, believing, and then just getting out and getting it done, making it happen. But, I guess my greatest achievement so far beyond my kids and, things like that, would be the people that I've affected and helped along the way. So there are a lot of people in my legacy that, have been able to build a business of their own, been able to create a life of their own. And that has filled me more and satisfied me more than any business deal I've ever done, any company I've ever built. Things are fun, it's great, but giving back, impacting the community, impacting lives. And I've done some things that were really fun from a big, standpoint of, bringing people together and doing things. So, the impact I'm making in this world, so that when I'm gone, people will say, man, this world is a better place because he was here, or my life is better because I knew him or met him, something like that, versus all of the other things that you could possibly do, achieve, or accumulate, so that's one, the impact and that legacy. And that's what I'm devoting the rest of my life to now at 52, really more so very deliberately versus what I've done in the past and where I've come from. And as an entrepreneur, that's kind of been my pattern. So that's one. And the other one is being able to show people that I don't care where you come from, what you grow up with, what kind of environment, you can do it. I was told my whole life, you'll either be dead or in jail before you're 30. And, you'll never succeed. You're never going to do this. Just go join the military, make a career of it. That's how I was programmed. That's all I heard growing up. And I did what I did in spite of all that, and it just didn't sink in. It's really interesting how that just didn't affect me. I just went out and did my own thing. And, so being able to overcome from that environment, and my story is nowhere near. I mean, there's stories out there, I mean, there's some people that grew up in some really bad situations. Glass houses. Just watch that movie. Unbelievable circumstances, and one of the main characters, the daughter, rose out of that. So what I grew up with was nothing in the whole scheme of things, but still to be able to achieve and not let that affect me long term, I think is a pretty good accomplishment.
Well, I don't know if you know it or not, but you are the exception to the rule. Children raised in environments like you were, the odds are not good for them. There's a lot against them coming out on top, and you need to give yourself credit for that and pat yourself on the back because you've done an amazing job of turning things around in your life and utilizing the setbacks and disappointments really as launch pads to your success. And as you've talked about, really since you were in your 50s here, you've devoted your life to not just turning your own life around, but to helping others to do the same. I've got one last question that I ask all of my guests. Before I go to that, tell our viewers and listeners how they can get in touch with you.
So it's gregdickerson.com. All of my, I've got a YouTube channel, podcast. We didn't really get to talking about multifamily, but I've got a lot of great content, on there that's all free and has some really good in-depth information about how to do multifamily syndication, develop real estate, start a business, entrepreneurship, just all sales, negotiations, all that kind of stuff. So gregdickerson.com, lots of information there. We'll have to follow up and do an actual multifamily conversation one day.
I would love to have a follow-up. There's so much about your life I'd like to explore, and also explore your coaching and your investing aspects as well here. Greg, my last question is, when you come to the end of this life's journey, how do you want your epitaph to read?
Yeah, like I said, that the world is a better place because I was here. One of the things that I fear the most is getting to the end, meeting my maker, and he shows me what I could have done in terms of impact, not cars, jets, buildings, deals, impact. Here's a person that you just walked by and didn't give them the time of day. You could have made a difference in their life like you did this one. So impact, that's what I'm after. And I want the world to be a better place when I'm gone. I don't want to live forever. I want the world to be a better place. And I want all of the lessons I've learned, all of the mistakes I've made, all of the challenges I've faced and overcome, starting from nothing with nothing, to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, anywhere I want, and to show other people how to do that, because that's the game changer in people's lives. When that light bulb goes off in somebody's head, when I'm working with them, coaching them, whatever, and that epiphany goes off and they realize, wow, I really am unlimited. I really can do what I want to do, where I want to do it, how I want to do it. That to me is cool, and have the impact they want to have, in the world. So that's what I want to see.
Some very good aspirational goals, and looks like you're really on the path to be that person. And I would love to have you back on the show, in particular to talk about how it is that you integrate a life worth living into your world of entrepreneurialism. And I would love really to explore those issues in much more depth. So I look forward to having you back on the program, Greg. It's been a pleasure having you here today.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I enjoyed it, and it's very different than any other podcast I've done. We usually don't get real deep into these things, and so I enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.